The Alpha Queen of Babylon, Part 1. Chapter 1. The Daughter of the Black Moon. She was born beneath a sky with no moon. The priests called it an ill omen, the black moon, they whispered, when the gods closed their eyes and something older slipped through. Even in Babylon, where prophecy was written in stars and entrails, such a birth was feared. When the girl's first cry came not as a wail but a low, guttural growl, the midwife dropped her. Her mother, a concubine of a temple priest, bled out on the floor of the shrine before the incense had even faded. Her body was burned without ceremony. The child was left nameless for 3 days, as the high priest debated whether to drown her in the Euphrates or raise her behind temple walls, far from the public eye. In the end, they chose secrecy over scandal. The infant was taken to the inner sanctum of Ishtar's temple, a place of stone corridors, flickering oil lamps, and half-spoken prayers. There, she was named Lilitu, after an old demon of the desert winds, an insult more than a title. The name clung to her like shadow. As she grew, the girls of the temple avoided her. She never took sick, never cried, and never bled when scraped. By age 6, she could hear footsteps long before they approached, and animals, stray cats, hawks, even desert foxes, followed her silently. At night, when the moon was full, she often woke outside her chamber, barefoot and dazed, with sand in her hair and claw-like scratches on her arms. No one ever saw her leave. She dreams too deeply, the priestesses murmured. She walks with spirits, the old women said. She is cursed, the high priest declared. Lilitu said nothing. She listened. She watched. And deep inside, she waited for the moon to tell her who she was. At 15, everything changed. It was during the spring ritual of the moon's favor, a ceremony held once every 5 years. The royal family would attend. This time, Prince Belshazzar, son of King Nabonidus, would sit in judgment, choosing which priestess would sing the sacred verses before the gods and the people. Lilitu had never been chosen for anything before. But this time, some god, some force chose her. She was led to the outer courtyard, her skin rubbed with oil, her body draped in thin white silk. She stood alone in the moonlight as nobles and scribes gathered around. And then she saw him. Prince Belshazzar. He was beautiful in the way fire was beautiful, sharp and golden and dangerous. His gaze swept past the crowd and landed on her, and in that instant, Lilitu's breath caught. The bond snapped into place like a pulled string. It was not imagined, not hoped for. It was real, a force in her chest, her spine, her skin. Her knees weakened. Her throat burned with a name she had never spoken. And he felt it too. For a moment, his eyes widened, and his posture changed, his nostrils flared, and his hand tightened around the gold pommel of his belt. Their eyes locked, and the whole world fell silent. Then he looked away. Cold. Calculated. Dismissive. As if nothing had happened. The ritual continued, and Lilitu sang, but her voice trembled. When it was over, Belshazzar made no mention of her. That night, back in the temple, she collapsed. The bond had been broken, not naturally, but forcefully. His rejection wasn't ignorance. It was deliberate. A prince of Babylon could not be bound to a nameless, low-born girl, an omega with no standing, no claim, no dowry. Her body convulsed with pain, though no wound could be found. Her dreams that night were red and silver and screaming. The next morning, one of the temple guards was found dead. Torn apart, throat mangled, blood staining the stone steps. They blamed wild dogs. But no dogs had entered the temple walls in over a century. The high priest declared her cursed. The younger acolytes avoided her entirely. She was confined to her chamber, but locks didn't hold her. She would wake outside again, moonlight kissing her skin, her hands stained with soil or sometimes blood. And always, the same whisper in her dreams. Come to the sand. Come to your kind. She didn't know what it meant. Not yet. But something inside her did. The city feared her. The gods ignored her. The man fate had chosen for her had turned his back. Lilitu had nothing. No name. No pack. No power. But the moon was rising, and it had not forgotten her. Chapter 2. A Wolf Among Lambs. They kept her away from sharp things after the guard died. The temple chamber doors, once ceremonial, were now sealed with bronze locks. Guards watched her day and night. Not that it mattered. Lilitu had already stopped sleeping like the other girls. When darkness fell, her senses sharpened. Her dreams were louder than the real world. She could hear the heartbeat of the priests outside her chamber. Smell fear in the sweat of the acolytes. Hear the click of a beetle walking 3 rooms away. By day, she played her role, obedient, blank-eyed, silent. She carried bowls of incense, recited old hymns, and kept her eyes down. But by night, she walked, sometimes in truth, sometimes in memory. She no longer knew the difference. The whispers had started. The other girls in the temple, daughters of nobles, priestesses in training, spoke of her as if she couldn't hear. She's the one who cursed the prince. She smells like the dogs in the gutters. She walks in her sleep. I saw her outside the walls once, barefoot. They didn't whisper in fear. They whispered in disgust. She was less than them. Not one of them. She was something else. Lilitu had stopped bleeding. Her cycles had ended a year earlier than the others. Her body ran hot at night and cold at dawn. She began to see reflections that didn't move in time with her. Her own eyes flickered silver in the dark. She stopped praying. The gods had never answered anyway. One night, she was caught standing on the edge of the temple roof, barefoot, arms outstretched to the stars. She wasn't planning to jump. She was waiting for the voice to return, the one that spoke in dreams. The one that called her daughter. That night, it didn't speak in words. It only howled. The next morning, they moved her to a stone cell underground. The excuse was safety. They said she had gone mad. She didn't argue. In her cell, she scratched symbols into the stone, ones she didn't remember learning. Curves like claws. Spirals like moons. She heard howling at night when there should have been silence. No one else heard it. Sometimes, when the guards came to bring her food, they recoiled. They claimed she smelled of ash and wild things. One guard refused to enter. Another swore she smiled with teeth longer than human. No one touched her anymore. Not by accident, not by command. Even the priestesses left food at the threshold. She had become a ghost among them. But she was no ghost. She was changing. One night, during the full moon, something inside her snapped. Not like pain, but like a door swinging open. She awoke in the middle of the desert, barefoot, blood on her mouth, and a dead jackal at her side. She had no memory of killing it, no wound on her body. Only the taste of iron on her tongue. She walked back to the city before dawn, unseen, barefoot, cold. She knew then she was not sick, not cursed, not mad. She was not human. They say the temple of Ishtar was once a place of beauty, but to Lilitu it was a cage, a place of lambs and blind men, singing praises to gods who had never heard them. She had walked among them for years, always pretending to be small. But something had awakened in her, an instinct, a rhythm older than stone. She began watching the guards. Not out of fear, but hunger. She watched the priestesses too, not as rivals, but as prey. And in the pit of her belly, something stirred whenever the moonlight touched her skin. Not rage. Not madness. Power. They were right to fear her. But not because she was cursed. Because she was beginning to remember what she truly was. A wolf among lambs. Chapter 3. The Mark of the Mate. The spring of the 3rd year arrived early. The air in Babylon turned warm and thick by the 2nd moon of the season, and the priests declared it a sign of divine favor. Offerings were doubled, incense thickened the temples, and the festival of renewal was extended by 3 days. The city feasted. The temple prepared. Lilitu was summoned. Not by name, never by name. The summons came as it always did, a silent guard, a flick of the wrist, a command spoken without eye contact. She followed. She didn't ask why, but she already knew. The festival of renewal brought the nobility into the temple's great courtyard. The king rarely attended in person anymore, his mind wandering and his body failing. But his son, Belshazzar, had become the city's golden figurehead, tall, gilded, lion-eyed. He was the breath of a new age. And on this day, he would be choosing a temple girl to perform the moonlit blessing, an ancient rite meant to honor both the gods and the bloodline of the king. Lilitu had not stood among the chosen in years. She wasn't meant to. Yet there she was, summoned by name for the first time in nearly a decade. Her simple robes were placed with pale silk and silver anklets that jingled softly as she walked. She was older now, sharper. Something in her face had changed, less girl, more predator, but they had no word for it. The other priestesses stared at her with unreadable expressions. No one dared speak. She entered the courtyard just as the moon broke free of the clouds. The crowd fell to a hush. Lilitu's bare feet touched the marble dais. Her hair, dark as pitch, hung unbound down her back. She kept her eyes forward. But she felt him. Before she saw them, she felt them. A pull in her gut, a crackle in her breath. The air thickened around her like honey, and her heart began to thunder, not with fear, but with recognition. She turned her head. There he was. Belshazzar stood beneath a gold-draped pavilion, eyes shadowed by firelight and moonlight. And in that moment, that exact breath, the bond snapped into place. She staggered. Her legs trembled as her vision darkened at the edges, and her skin flushed with heat. A rush of scent filled her head, myrrh, stone, metal, and something primal. He was her mate. Not a guess. Not a fantasy. The bond was real. Immediate. Irrevocable. He felt it too. She saw the twitch in his fingers, the sudden tensing of his jaw. His pupils expanded. His breath hitched. The moment cracked the stillness of the entire courtyard. They were tied now, bound not by choice, but by fate older than empires. One breath. One look. That was all it took. But then, he looked away. Not in fear. Not in awe. In contempt. He turned, lifting his chin, and faced the priest without acknowledging her at all. The bond snapped again, not broken, but suppressed. Shoved down. Crushed beneath centuries of royal pride. He was rejecting it. Not denying it. He knew. But he chose to walk away. Lilitu stood frozen on the dais, her body aflame with invisible pain. Her throat tightened. Her skin prickled. The silk of her robe felt like thorns against her body. Her wolf rose up, snarling inside her chest, demanding acknowledgement. But she remained still. Because this was Babylon. And she was nothing. He was a prince. She was a cast-off priestess, rumored cursed, and whispered of like a ghost. A match between them would never be allowed. Not even if the gods themselves howled for it. And so, he turned his back. The ritual continued. Lilitu recited the verses, her voice hollow and breaking. The crowd barely noticed. But that night, back in her chamber, she collapsed. Her body convulsed. Her bones ached as if they were tearing apart inside her skin. The bond wasn't meant to be severed, not like this. It wasn't a clean break. It left her raw, tethered to something she could no longer reach. A hell trapped in her throat. A claw buried beneath her ribcage. She bled silver that night. From her nose, from her fingertips, from her soul. The next morning, the temple buzzed with whispers. A palace guard had been found in the garden, ripped apart, face unrecognizable, blood soaked into the stone. They said it was an animal. A mad dog. A lion escaped from the royal menagerie. But Lilitu woke with soil on her feet, blood beneath her nails, and no memory of what she had done. In the weeks that followed, she was locked away again. No longer whispered about. Now openly feared. No one dared look at her. Even the high priest refused to speak her name. She was not a girl anymore. She was not a priestess. Not a virgin. Not a child. She was marked not just as an omega, but as a rejected mate. And that made her dangerous. To the court. To the temple. To the prince who denied her. And most of all to herself. Because now, she had nothing left to lose. Chapter 4. A Court of Jackals. The palace gates were made of polished bronze and painted cedar, flanked by towers adorned with lion carvings and banners that fluttered in the hot wind. From her windowless cell beneath the Temple of Ishtar, Lilitu couldn't see them. But she could feel them, the power, the arrogance, the hunger of those who ruled Babylon. The rituals had resumed without her. The festivals, the blessings, the chants. All polished and perfect, as if nothing had happened. As if she had never stood beneath the moon and met the gaze of the prince. As if the bond had never snapped across the heavens like a god's whip. The rejection had cost her more than pain. It cost her place. She was no longer listed among the temple maidens. Her name had been erased from the blessing rolls. When the younger priestesses passed her corridor, they no longer averted their eyes. They looked through her, as if she were a ghost, a bad dream they had all agreed to forget. But not everyone forgot. Some watched. Carefully. High Priest Nabaru, a man with a spine as thin as his gold-threaded robes, visited her cell once. Only once. He didn't speak at first. He simply stood in the doorway, a veil of incense curling around him, and stared at her with a look of clinical curiosity. "Do you know what you are, girl?" he asked finally. Lilitu didn't answer. He tilted his head, frowning as if she were a cracked urn, once valuable, now useless. "You were meant to be discarded at birth," he murmured. "A mistake spared by superstition. But now the bond has marked you. You've drawn attention from those far above your station. Lilitu raised her eyes. The prince rejected me. The priest's smile didn't reach his eyes. Yes, he said. He did. And now we must cleanse the air of your stink. Over the next few days, it became clear Lilitu was not just being cast out, she was being erased. Temple guards were reassigned. The priestesses who had trained her were sent to distant shrines. Anyone who had known her even faintly was silenced, threatened, or bribed. The court moved like a serpent. Quiet. Swift. Cruel. Word reached the palace. Belshazzar had entered seclusion, claiming he was preparing for an oracle's journey to the Temple of Marduk. The city celebrated his piety. But in truth, Lilitu knew he was hiding from the shame, from the bond, from the thing inside himself he refused to face. But Lilitu was not hiding. She began to change. Her senses sharpened more each day. She could hear the rats moving behind the walls. She could taste the fear in the sweat of the boy who brought her food. Her fingernails darkened at the edges, thickening when she was angry. Her eyes glinted silver even in total darkness. And the dreams came again. This time not just voices, but visions. Of wolves standing beneath red moons. Of ancient symbols etched into desert stone. Of a city with no name, burning in moonlight as howls rose from its towers. A place not built by humans. A place that called to her. One night, she heard a whisper through the barred grate of her cell. Lilitu. She froze. No one had spoken her name in weeks. A shadow stood just beyond the torchlight. It was Iltani, a former friend from her earliest temple days, a soft-voiced girl with clever eyes and a careful mouth. I shouldn't be here, Iltani said, eyes darting around. If they find me. Why did you come? Lilitu whispered. Iltani hesitated. Then, because I heard, something is happening in the palace. They say the prince is having nightmares. That he wakes screaming. That he smells smoke and hears howls only he can hear. Lilitu felt something cold and powerful settle inside her chest. He feels the bond, she said. Iltani swallowed. He told the king you enchanted him. That you cursed him with your blood. Lilitu stared at her. And what do you believe? Iltani hesitated too long. Then she placed something beneath the bars of the door, a thin shard of obsidian carved with a crescent moon. They're planning something, she said. The court. The priests. They want you gone. Not hidden. Not locked away. Gone. Lilitu took the shard. It was cool in her palm, warm at its edges, as if it had been waiting for her hand alone. I'm not leaving, she said softly. This is my city. Iltani shook her head. No. It belongs to jackals now. And jackals always eat the wounded first. After Iltani left, Lilitu sat in the darkness with the shard in her hand. Her heart beat slow and steady. Something in her had cracked the moment Belshazzar turned away. But it hadn't broken. It had hardened. She was not a priestess anymore. Not a chosen girl. Not a mate. She was a threat. And they were right to fear her. Let them whisper. Let them scheme. Let them send their jackals. She would become the wolf they feared in their darkest dreams. And when she left this cell, it would not be in silence. Chapter 5. Blood on Marble. The moon rose red. Not fully, not entirely, but enough. Enough to turn the clouds to bruises and paint the stone walls in the color of warning. The old priest called it Ishru's eye, a sign of punishment from the goddess, a crimson veil cast over those who had angered her. But Lilitu knew better now. The red moon was not wrath. It was a summons. She had not slept in 2 nights. Her skin itched, her joints ached, her body too hot beneath her thin linen shift. Her cell smelled of dust and fear. Her blood felt thick and heavy in her veins, and her vision had started to blur at the edges. But her hearing sharp as blades. She heard every step of the guards above her, heard the clink of bronze armor, heard the low murmur of one priest telling another, it must be tonight. They were going to end it. They were coming for her. She crouched in the corner of her stone cell, cradling the obsidian shard Iltani had given her. It had cut her thumb the night she first held it, and since then, the wound had not closed. A thin line of silver blood, bright, metallic, still lingered there, shining faintly in the moonlight that now filtered through the ceiling grate. She pressed the edge of the shard into her palm, deeper this time. A line of silver welled up again, but no pain. Instead, heat, power, a pull. From the moon, from beneath the earth, from something ancient and buried inside her. And then she heard it. Not a whisper, not a dream, a howl, real, distant, and answered by something in her throat. She didn't remember standing. The guards came just before midnight. There were 3 of them, 1 priest, 2 soldiers. They wore holy tokens around their necks, charms of Ishtar and Marduk, small ivory carvings meant to protect them from corruption. They opened the cell door slowly, as if expecting her to scream. She did not. She was already standing. Her eyes, wide and calm. Her hair, loose and wild. Her skin, glowing faintly in the moonlight like polished stone. She looked peaceful, until one of the guards stepped forward and reached for her arm. She didn't scream. She didn't speak. She moved. The first man's throat opened like wet cloth under her claws. She didn't have claws a moment earlier. The priest turned to run, but she was already on him, snapping his jaw sideways with a single strike of her arm. The last soldier raised a blade, muttering a warding prayer. But she was faster. Her body shifted mid-step, not fully, not completely, but enough. Her spine cracked, her fingers lengthened, her muscles bulged beneath skin that glowed like moonstone. Her face stayed human, but her teeth gleamed silver. She lunged. He screamed once. Then the marble floor was red. The temple shook with the echo of it. Priests rushed toward the screams, but stopped at the top of the stairs. They saw the blood before they saw her. Then she emerged, walking up the steps barefoot, her shift soaked, her hands stained, her silver eyes reflecting the torches like twin moons. Gasps. Screams. She didn't run. She didn't hide. She stood, staring down Babylon's holy elite with the stillness of a storm right before it breaks. High Priest Nebaru appeared, flanked by temple guards, now armed with spears. His face twisted when he saw her. "You've killed sacred men," he hissed. "They were not sacred," she said. Her voice was low, ragged, edged with something not quite human. "They were yours." Nebaru raised a trembling hand. "You are no child of Ishtar. You are a monster. You are cursed." Lilitu smiled, silver and slow. "No," she said. "I'm chosen." And then she howled. The sound shattered silence like glass. It rolled across the courtyard, up the walls of the ziggurat, out into the city beyond. Birds scattered. Dogs howled in answer. Somewhere in the lower districts, a man fell to his knees and wept without knowing why. It was not just a cry of rage. It was a claim, a blood mark on the night. Lilitu fled before they could seize her. Not out of fear, out of purpose. She leapt from the lower temple wall, ran barefoot through back alleys and gardens, through shadows and oil-lit streets. She didn't look back. Her skin still shimmered with the memory of the shift, her senses alive with sound and scent. And somewhere in her chest, something smiled. She was not fully turned. Not yet. But the beast was awake now. It knew her name. It knew her path. And Babylon would never hold her again. Chapter 6. The Burning Gate. The city held its breath. By morning, the temple courtyard had been scrubbed of blood, the broken bodies removed under veils of secrecy. No public decrees were made. No names were spoken. But everyone knew. Something had happened. Something had escaped. Lilitu had disappeared into the underbelly of Babylon, the narrow alleys behind spice merchants, the servant corridors behind shrines, the tunnels carved centuries earlier during a forgotten siege. She moved like smoke through the cracks of the city. Soldiers searched. Priests prayed. Doors were kicked in. Families were threatened. But no one found her. No one who lived to speak of it. She didn't sleep. She couldn't. The power inside her pulsed, raw and volcanic. The city's heartbeat rang in her ears like war drums. She could smell fear in the sand. She could feel the moon's weight in her chest, though it was waning now, a sliver instead of a crown. It didn't matter. The moon no longer controlled her. It followed her. The order came on the 3rd day after her escape. Burn the girl out. Not from the king, he was too distant, too fragile, hidden behind layers of illusion and ritual. No, the order came from the High Council of Temple Lords, a circle of oily men in bronze-threaded robes who believed they spoke for the gods. They sealed the North Gate, the oldest passage out of the city, the one closest to the outer fields and desert beyond. They placed guards, lit fires, mounted archers on the rooftops. But they didn't understand what they were dealing with. Lilitu stood in the shadow of the gate at midnight, barefoot in the dust, her shift torn, her hair wild. The wind howled across the stone walls, and her blood beat like a war drum. She remembered walking through this gate as a child, once, only once, to accompany a priestess to a harvest ritual. She remembered the lions carved into the gate's pillars, the smell of fresh bread in the outer markets, the way the wind shifted, drier, freer, as soon as you passed beyond it. And now it was barred, locked, guarded, as if the city could keep her. The guards saw her approach and laughed. One called her a whore in wolf skin. Another warned her that her kind burned like parchment. She said nothing. She walked forward, closer and closer, until she was within reach of the torches. And then she stopped, raised her hand, opened the cut on her palm again, and held. The fire answered. Not from torches, not from lamps. From within the gate itself. The great bronze hinges glowed red. The stonework cracked. The lion carvings blackened, their mouths opening in silent screams. A sound like thunder split the air. No lightning, no clouds, just a sonic roar that shattered every oil lamp within 100 steps. The guards screamed, ran. Some fell, choking on ash. Some burned where they stood. Lilitu walked through the fire like a shadow. Her skin glowed, her eyes gleamed silver blue, and her voice rang out not in words, but in command. Not to humans, not to gods, to the beasts beneath the earth. And they answered. Wolves. Real ones. From the dry fields beyond the city walls, from the riverbanks, from the broken ruins where things with yellow eyes had long watched in silence. They came, not in thousands, not in armies, but enough. They ran past her, beside her, around her. They followed her. By dawn, the north gate no longer stood. Only embers, ash, and stories. The temple said it was a rogue fire. The soldiers blamed foreign saboteurs. The priests insisted it was divine punishment for some unknown sin. But in the taverns, in the slave quarters, in the kitchens of nobles, a different story bloomed like wildfire. She walked through the flames. She called the wolves. She burned the lion gate and vanished into the desert. She was not cursed. She was becoming. Far beyond the city, Lilitu stood on a ridge and watched the smoke rise. Her skin was still hot. Her voice still raw. Her legs ached from running. But she was smiling. Not with triumph. Not with peace. With clarity. Babylon had tried to bury her. But it had only broken her chains. She was not running anymore. She was rising. And the world would feel her return soon, and in blood. Chapter 7. The City of Bones. The desert did not welcome her. It watched her. Measured her. Tested her. The winds howled like lost spirits, hurling sand in spirals across the dunes. The sun fell like fire on her back by day, and the cold clawed into her bones at night. Her feet cracked. Her throat burned. Her body had not eaten in days. But she did not stop. Babylon lay behind her like a fading dream, the memory of fire still burning in her chest. The howl she'd let loose at the north gate echoed in her blood. Something had changed inside her. She could feel it in her breath, her heartbeat, her very bones. She had crossed a line. And there would be no going back. By the fourth day, the dreams returned. But they weren't dreams. She saw silver eyes in the dunes, heard the sound of claws in shifting sand, smelled wet fur and old blood beneath the wind. She was being followed, not by Babylonian hunters, not by wolves, by something else. That night, she found the cave. It appeared without warning, carved into a jagged cliff of redstone. No markings, no signs of life, just a dark mouth yawning open in the rock, as if the mountain itself had waited centuries to breathe again. She entered. The silence inside was alive. The air tasted old, like rot and ritual. The ground sloped downward. The walls were painted in streaks of ash and dried blood. Symbols, crude and ancient, scratched into stone with claws instead of tools. Then she heard it. A growl. Low. Deep. Not human. She turned. And they were there. 6 of them, hunched in the dark. Eyes reflecting light that wasn't there. Skin stretched over bone and sinew. Some more beast than man. Others man-shaped, but wrong joints bent too far, teeth too sharp, the wildness dripping from them like sweat. Lilitu didn't scream. She stood still. Let the fear crawl across her skin and fall away. One of them stepped forward. A massive male, gray-furred arms, ribs visible beneath scarred skin, a single silver chain dragging from his wrist like a broken shackle. He sniffed the air. Slowly. Deliberately. You smell wrong, he growled. Lilitu met his gaze. No, she said. I smell and finished. The others growled low, circling her. One lunged forward, fangs bared. She didn't flinch. The alpha, the gray male, raised a hand. The lunging one stopped. He looked at Lilitu again. You're not turned. Not yet. You're not human. Not anymore. He stepped closer, baring his teeth in a humorless smile. You walked from Babylon. Alone. Through the sands. Without turning. You should be dead. I was, she whispered. But something brought me back. He circled her. Slow. Calculating. We are the forgotten, he said. The beast men. The broken pack. We were driven from the cities when the temples rose. Hunted. Cursed. We are what they fear. I know, she said. Because I am what they fear now. Then why come here? His eyes narrowed. You seek a pack? Lilitu shook her head. I seek myself. Silence fell. Then the Alpha nodded once, grim and slow. Then you must pass the trial, he said. What trial? His eyes glinted. The moonborn pit. They led her through a twisting tunnel, deeper into the cave. The walls grew narrower. The air colder. And then it opened into a vast hollow chamber lit by shafts of pale moonlight slicing through cracks in the ceiling. Bones filled the pit. Piles of them. Wolf. Human. Hybrid. Thousands of years of death and failure. This is where our kind are made or ended, the Alpha said. He handed her a blade, crude, stone, still wet with oil. You will bleed, he said. You will fight. You will face the moon, not as a servant, but as a challenger. If I fail, she asked, you die, and we will eat what's left. Lilitu smiled, a slow, silver thing. Then I suppose I'll need to win. She stepped into the pit. The air shifted. The moon broke through above her, full now, impossibly, terrifyingly full. The ground shook, and her body changed. Not the half-shift from the temple. Not the flicker of claws and teeth. This was total. Bones cracked. Skin tore. Her breath came in gasps as her limbs bent and reformed. Her scream turned into a howl that filled the pit and echoed through stone and time. She fell to her knees, then to all fours. Her flesh blistered, then reformed. And when she rose again, she stood between shapes. Not beast. Not woman. Something new. Something more. The Alpha stepped back. The others knelt. And for the first time in her life, Lilitu felt whole. She was no longer an Omega. No longer a cast-off. No longer alone. She was becoming. And in the shadows of the old world, beneath the bones of the fallen, a queen began to rise. Chapter 8. The Broken Moon. The moon was wrong. It hung in the sky not as a perfect silver disk, but fractured, broken into 3 distorted shards behind a veil of desert cloud. The exiled pack had gathered in a ring of scorched stone, every head turned upward, silent and still. Lilitu stood in the center of the ring, barefoot, dust covering her skin, a smear of ash across her forehead. Her trial had not ended in the pit. It had only begun. The Alpha, called Naram by the others, stepped forward. In one hand he held a bowl of thick, black oil. In the other, a blade carved from the rib of a lion. You stand before the broken moon, he said, his voice low and heavy with ritual. Not because you are wolf, not because you are woman, but because you are neither, and both. The others echoed his words in a low chant, voices vibrating in the stone air. Lilitu did not flinch. Tonight, you will be unmade, Naram said, and remade in blood and howl. If the moon accepts you, you will rise. If it does not, he gestured to the outer edge of the ring, where the bones of the failed lay in silent piles. You will become one of them. Lilitu nodded once. Then begin, she said. The blade cut her first. A single line down her palm, from thumb to wrist. The blood that welled out shimmered, not red, but silver blue, glowing faintly like liquid moonlight. Naram dipped his fingers in it and smeared it across her brow, her chest, and the center of her throat. Blood of the broken. Blood of the born. Then he stepped back. The pack howled in unison, and Lilitu dropped to her knees. It came not like a bolt of lightning, but like drowning. Her breath caught. Her skin began to ripple, not just shifting, but splitting, like something trying to crawl out from beneath. Pain lanced through her, bones bending, rearranging, breaking, and regrowing. Her eyes burned. Her ears lengthened. Her teeth cut through her gums like blades. She screamed. The kind of scream that claws at the soul and strips language from the throat. And then came the visions. She saw cities beneath the sand. Wolves the size of lions with glowing eyes. A woman with gold tattoos on her neck, weeping blood. A sword made of obsidian that sang in her hand. A crown of antlers soaked in silver fire. And above it all, a moon that shattered, not fell. shattered. And from the pieces, she was born. When she awoke, the sun was rising. She was naked in the center of the circle. The pack had not moved, but now they bowed their heads, not in submission, but in recognition. Her skin was unmarred, her hair longer, darker, her breath steady. But something was different. She felt it. She could still feel the moon, though it had fled the sky. She could still hear it, not above her, but inside her. Lilitu stood, slow and sure. "I did not turn," she said aloud, her voice like a blade drawn from a sheath. Naram stepped forward. "No, you did something else. What am I?" The old alpha tilted his head, his scarred face unreadable. "You are the first of something new." Later, around a fire that burned blue, the pack whispered. She didn't shift. She bled light. She walked through the fire of the moon and didn't fall. She called wolves who were never hers. She remembers things she should not know. Lilitu sat alone, staring into the flames. She remembered it too, the shattered moon, the sword, the crown. She remembered pain. And she remembered power. The kind that could level cities. The kind that made the bond with Belshazzar feel like a bruise on her ankle, not a mark on her soul. She was no longer what he had rejected. She was no longer a lost thing in the dark. She was something the world had no name for. But soon it would. Across every empire, every forgotten age, stories still whisper. If this tale stirred your spirit, leave a like to honor the echoes of the past. Share your thoughts in the comments. Every voice weaves a new legend into the sands of time. And subscribe to our YouTube channel Historical Fantasy Stories, where myths walk beside history, and every discovery changes the world. The next forgotten legend is waiting to be found.